Alrighty, so today I wanted to play some Ark Survival Evolved. Now I know this game's old and I've actually owned it since the early release way back in 2015, but my only recollection of the game is that even on the lowest settings, my computer couldn't run it at the time. So after not even an hour of gameplay, I quit playing it, and it sat in my Steam library gathering dust for years. But a couple of months ago, a friend of mine wanted to start a new Ark and he wanted me to join him, so I finally gave it a second chance. And boy was I upset that the game was actually this good, and I had spent years not playing it even though I owned it. And so with Ark 2 scheduled to be released next year, I wanted to make at least one series on this game. So because my experience with this game is super limited, I want to do everything. I want to tame every dino, I want to breed every dino at least once, and I want to beat all of the bosses. At least for the island. This series might extend into the DLC maps, it just depends on how much time we have before the next game's released. I like to experience games how the developer intended, so for this series I was going to leave everything on the vanilla single player settings. So let's get into it. I quickly set up a thatch base to farm some early experience points, but I didn't plan on staying here long. So at this point I had a very limited experience on the island. I had only explored a handful of the southern beaches, but on a previous playthrough I found a hill with lots of metal nodes on it. Many veteran players are probably very well aware of this area, but I really liked the neighboring hilltop, so I decided to set up my base here. So we spent the rest of the first night huddled around a campfire, and in the morning we made an uneventful trek to the new base location. So now that we were in the area I wanted to establish a permanent base at, there was a number of tasks I wanted to complete. Firstly, I wanted to construct a warehouse to store all of my resources for further expansion, and I also wanted to tame a bunch of dillos and parasaurs. I really like the idea of leading huge herds of dinosaurs, and parasaurs make perfect pack animals. The dillos also produced extra small eggs, and they were one of the only dinos to do so that could actually defend themselves. With these goals in mind, I spent the next couple of days gathering the requisite resources and taming any dinos that I figured I could manage. So after a couple of days of arduous resource gathering, I finished the warehouse, upgraded my tools to metal, and even managed to tame some extra Dilophosaurs and Parasaurs. But I was still in a pretty precarious position, as any dangerous dinos that wandered into my little settlement would surely mean the end of everything. However, without access to the tranquilizer darts, I felt that I lacked the stopping power to tame anything worthwhile. So this became my next major goal, to make it to level 62. But in the meantime, there was a number of smaller tasks that I wanted to complete. Firstly was sort of a house, somewhere I could place a bed and store both cooked and rotten meat. Next door to this, I wanted to set up my first farm, which would be for narcoberries. These two buildings together would allow me to make an unending amount of narcotics. Next, I wanted to construct a building where I could store all the ingredients for kibble. In the middle of the building, I wanted numerous cooking pots where I could mass produce this dino wonder food. Simple kibble would require small eggs, and basic kibble would require extra small eggs. This leads me to my next two buildings. I wanted to construct two corrals, one for Dilophosaurs and one for raptors. I was hoping that 10 females to 1 male would yield a pretty consistent amount of eggs, but I guess I just have to wait and see. Something interesting that I found out recently is that if a creature is carrying over 85% of their max carry weight, then they'll actually become encumbered. And so with a little bit of math we can figure that if something has a max carry capacity of over 1200, then they can comfortably carry 1,000 pounds of weight. So my goal with all of my Parasaurs that I found was to make sure that they can at least comfortably carry 1,000 pounds. If I had a train of 6 of them, then I can walk around with 6,000 pounds of carry weight. So I spent some time completely filling up my warehouse so I could construct my buildings without being interrupted. Whenever there's multiple things that I have to do, I like to do the most difficult thing first. So I wanted to completely fill up my stone coffers. In my efforts to speed up the process, I began to get pretty good at ordering my dinos around. And also developed some pretty good methods for organizing my supplies while I was out wandering around. The main resource that I was out gathering I would store on my pack Parasaurs. Everything else I would store on my main mount, which for now is just another Parasaur. Something important I noticed I could start doing was bringing extra tools and weapons for when they inevitably broke. This would allow me to gather resources without stopping until my Parasaur's inventories were completely full. With my plans all thought out, I got to work bringing them to fruition. Between resource runs, I began slapping down whole buildings, which was a breeze when my warehouse was completely full. Before long, my humble abode was finished, and my first crop plots were ready to be seeded with narcoberries, so I quickly set up some irrigation and did just that. I was out hunting with my Dilophosaurs one night when I happened upon a Phiomia. I read somewhere that you could force feed them stimberries to produce fertilizer in a compost bin. With no knowledge of a better method of producing fertilizer, I quickly knocked her out, tamed her, named her Betsy, and set up a station where I'd regularly visit to stock up on fertilizer. Now that I had access to crops, I finished the kibble producing building. I was out searching for some extra female Dilophosaurs one day when I stumbled upon a large beaver dam. I didn't put much thought to it, but I'm sure glad I checked it on my way back to the base, as when I looked inside I found heaps of cementing paste, rare flowers, and rare mushrooms. In hindsight, I probably should have used the cementing paste to make a greenhouse, but for some reason I really wanted to make a toilet. I next decided to set up my first corral, which was going to house my Dilophosaurs. And I soon learned that I need to be careful when leaving dinos on passive behavior. Unfortunately, before I even made it back to base, all the Dilophosaurs I had in the corral died. I was kind of upset, so I whistled for all of my dinos to go into an aggressive stance and kill anything in the base. After I mopped up that mess, I finally made a Pteranodon saddle, and now I had access to a decent scout. I also flushed the toilet for the first time, and I realized how useful it was. It rendered my compost station obsolete. After 2 whole days of playing Ark, I was finally reaching a point where I was pretty content with my progress. I wanted to hammer out some things that I had left on the back burner. After a long gathering run, I finally had at least one large storage box full of thatch, flint, stone, and wood. I next put the rest of my Dilophosaurs in the corral and had them all start producing eggs. This time I was careful and made sure that their aggression level was set to neutral and not passive. I next added the finishing touches to my narcoberry farm. I already had one long neck rifle, but I wanted to make 3 more. That way I wouldn't have to go into my inventory to switch ammo. And I also wanted each of these rifles to have a backup just in case they broke. This was going to require a lot of metal though. And now that I had a Pteranodon, I decided to scout out the path for any potential dangers before I moved my Parasaurs over. I spotted some Dilophosaurs, so I quickly knocked them out and started taming them. While they were taming up, I hopped back on my Pteranodon and continued scouting. While I was looking around, I noticed that something was off. There was Parasaurs scattering in all directions. But why were they running? I could only make out glimpses of the threat that they were fleeing from. But then I seen it. It was a raptor. All of my previous run-ins with these sultry dinos were ill-fated, as I was always caught off guard. But now I had the upper hand and I was determined to start taming some, while putting my surplus of trank arrows to use. And just like that, I managed to tame my first 2 raptors. Albeit low level raptors, but still I was pretty happy with it. A short while later I happened upon another raptor, and I managed to tame him as well. While I was waiting for him to tame, an iguanodon walked up, and at this point I felt pretty unstoppable, so I decided to knock him down as well. I was testing out my new raptors and I realized how much better they are than Dilophosaurs, but they're still susceptible to the Parasaur's Frighten ability. After I gathered them all back, I soon found myself in danger. I panicked here and pulled out my tranquilizer arrows when I should have pulled out Ebola. The last thing I did before I died was I whistled all of my dinos into an aggressive stance. Both of my raptors died, and I figured that all of my dinos would die soon after. But it was only those first 2 dinos, so I was curious what happened. The iguanodon I was taming died. But in a stroke of serendipity, the raptor I was taming managed to wake up just in time, and together with the Dilophosaurs, they managed to defeat the higher level raptor. I couldn't believe it. Soon after this, I found 2 replacement raptors, so technically I got away without losing anything. Now that I had some raptors, I went ahead and made them a corral, and I was really liking how the base was starting to look. I had the resources to do so I spent a little time crafting up some kibble. But soon after this, I finally herded all my parasaurs so that I could start mining some metal. Nighttime fell upon us as we finished up the mining, so I crafted up a bunch of torches and equipped it to a number of dinos, and I thought this was a pretty neat look. With so much metal to be smelted, I quickly threw down a building that would be dedicated to forges. Now that I had access to tranquilizer rounds for my long neck rifles, I quickly crafted up 50 of them. I also crafted up some bear traps because I finally planned on taming something that was big and could defend my base. While I was out looking for a good dino, I stumbled upon some raptors. This gave me a chance to test out my new weaponry. While they were taming up, I spotted a therizinosaur. This would be a really good tame for me. Not only could it defend my base, but they're also really good at collecting wood. This would cut down drastically on my gathering times. I flew above the beach to find some good placement options for my bear traps. While I was looking around, I noticed another therizinosaur was getting dangerously close to my other dinos. I tried to quickly fly over and pull them out of harm's way, but it quickly devolved into a mess. I decided that I was just going to try and tame this Therizinosaur anyways. I quickly stashed all of my gear on the surviving raptor, and then I pulled my 2 remaining dinos out of harm's way. I next moved in to take down this Therizinosaur, but that's a story for another day. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. I'm slowly going to release more episodes over the coming months, so if you guys want to keep up with my story, be sure to subscribe. Peace.